I went to Murrieta yesterday. I wasn't planning to go there, but I went there just to observe. And what I saw was one of the worst things that I've ever seen in my life.
A show of support in San Diego today for dozens of Central American migrants who were faced with loud, angry protests in Murrieta. I'm Dwayne Brown. The latest on the migrants and a new campaign to stop the border surge tonight on KPBS Evening Edition.
Plus, postpartum depression may start during pregnancy. What new research says about maternal mental health issues and how they're being treated. And North County Transit District answers questions about the tax-funded agency and the cost of their high turnover rate. I'm Peggy Pico with those interviews just ahead.
And get ready. One of San Diego's more colorful summer traditions is about to return. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Another flight of Central American immigrants landed today in El Centro without any incident like the angry flag-waving protest Tuesday in Murrieta. This group of migrants will stay in El Centro for processing, and the ones who arrived yesterday remain in Border Patrol stations in the South Bay tonight. After processing, they will be turned over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Some of the children in the group were hospitalized, although the Border Patrol isn't giving specifics. Those additional migrants are expected to arrive on Friday, while city leaders in Murrieta are actually holding a town hall meeting tonight to discuss the plans. The police chief there has also explained why officers did not stop the protesters yesterday who blocked the buses. Chief Sean Hayden says his staff was waiting for mutual aid to arrive, but the Border Patrol made the decision to pull out before more officers arrived. President Obama vowed this week to take executive action to deal with immigration. Now, North County Congressman Darrell Issa is joining 32 other House Republicans, telling the president to essentially pump the brakes on his executive orders. In a letter to the White House, Republicans say the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, is a failed policy, saying it rewards families and individuals who have broken our laws, further encouraging others to seek similar benefits. The letter also urges the president to work with Congress. Customs and Border Protection is launching an international media campaign aimed at slowing the flow of illegal immigration. It includes Spanish-language radio ads and signs like this one saying, "I thought it would be easy for my son to get papers in the U.S. I was wrong." CPB says the campaign's other message is if immigrants reach the U.S., they cannot stay. The ads will run in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Of course, we will have more on this story coming up. You can find much more about the surge of migrants from Central America and the debate over immigration reform on our website at kpbs.org. The North County Transit District is a taxpayer-funded agency that runs the Coaster, Breeze, Sprinter, and Lyft transit services. We recently heard from our media partner, iNewsSource, about the agency's high rate of turnover this year. Peggy Pico talks with the company's chief executive officer.
For the past 16 months, KPBS media partner iNewsSource has published a series of investigative reports into the operation, funding, and staffing of the North County Transit District. Joining me to talk about what's happening at the agency is NCTD's Executive Director, Matthew Tucker. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Last month, iNewsSource reported 20 high-level managers and employees left NCTD since January of this year. For an agency with only 127 employees, how do you explain why so many people have left in the last 6 months?
First, that's factually incorrect. Of the 23 employees that were identified, a significant number of them were not high-level employees whatsoever.
About how many?
I can't give you the exact number off the top of my head, but about 37% of that 23 number were people that were laid off due to decisions that we made from a business point of view, and the vast majority of them were also laid off due to the fact that they were being funded through grant programs that were being discontinued. So that represented a true up for our budget in terms of positions that were no longer going to be continued in the organization. It also reflected some changes that we had made business decisions throughout the year, and as we were going into July 1 of our new budget, those layoffs had to take effect.
The chief operating officer, chief of safety, chief of transit enforcement
they did not all leave at one time. Those positions are all filled today. What is the most important answer? The most important answer is if the focus is on the direct reporting, the leadership that reports to me, every single position is filled.
And speaking about Richard Katz, who's the former chairman of Los Angeles Metrolink, told iNewsSource in a statement that as a board member, he would be concerned if the same turnover happened at his agency. He also raised questions about adequate experience in operations and safety for the senior level replacement hires that you were just talking about. So how would you respond to that?
Well, first, I would say that our board, the NCTD Board of Directors, oversees the day-to-day operations of NCTD, provides policy direction and feedback. They get significant briefings on what we do. Our board is very comfortable with where we are. We have never in the history of NCTD had more experienced people in positions than we have today. I'm very happy with the skill sets of the people that we have in positions today. In fact, one of the employees that holds one of those senior positions has been with NCTD probably 25 to 30 something years. So he has the adequate experience to do the work that we're asking him to do.
Well, I know iNewsSource also reported over the past year, many former NCD employees have come forward anonymously, as you're aware, with information and concerns about the agency's management and safety culture. I'm going to read some things here. One former employee said, in part, a definite lack of trust for all employees and their ability to become a parent. General counsel was brought in. All documents had to be reviewed at the general counsel level. This became gridlock for most departments. Some of us were told our performance was declining. Everything was in a state of flux. And another former employee blamed you specifically. He said, or he or she said, it has nothing to do with the writing public anymore or the long-term or short-term interest of the agency. It's all about what makes him look good. Do you see any connection between your management style and maybe this turnover? No.
The fact of the matter is from the point that I was hired in late December 2008, the board had set a number of priorities. One was sort of financial stability, and then the other key principles were related to reshaping our business model, which required a change in our organizational culture. So if you look at during the time period that I've been there, you will see that we have developed plans across all of our business areas that never existed before. We've updated policies. We've brought in-house general counsel. What I wanted to do was to create an agency that was much more responsive, that the board, through policies and procedures, could have a better idea of what's going on. The fact of the matter is we do ask lots of questions. We do ask our employees hard questions. We do look at the work that they do, that we do scrutinize them. And if we don't think it's where it needs to be, we ask them to continue to work on it. I don't apologize for that. That's part of doing the job, being due diligent and asking tough questions and expecting people to do their best. And
speaking of that, the employees who did talk with iNewsSource, they said they did so anonymously because they had to sign a non-disclosure agreement and they feared legal repercussions. North County Transit District is a public agency funded by taxpayers that I believe is supposed to be transparent. So do you feel you have an obligation to, as a public employee, to answer questions about your agencies, about your job actions? Let's correct one thing factually. They did not have to sign a severance agreement. Those employees chose to execute a severance agreement. And we believe providing severance agreements with employees that you're going to separate is the right thing to do for the employee and for those families to help them successfully transition. The fact of the matter that someone voluntarily signs an agreement, then fails to live up to that agreement should not grant them the ability to speak anonymously without anyone mentioning the fact that they signed an agreement and are violating the terms of that agreement. It just doesn't, it can't be fair in the sense that from a transit district perspective, we can't talk about what's in someone's personnel record, and there's no way for KPBS to actually know the credibility of the person that they're getting the information from, since KPBS has no idea what's in that personnel file. Are there types of proprietary information that you think needs to be protected, and if so, what are they, and why do you think it's a public agency is what I'm getting at? So what can you talk about as far as how the agency is operating? I can talk to you 100% about anything about what the agency is operating.
And I suspect for you, most of the employees that you're speaking, that KPBS speaks to and gives them the anonymous comments, most of those comments are anonymous because those employees don't want to attach their names to it. They understand that KPBS is facilitating and supporting of an approach that doesn't afford NCTD due process. So everyone would really love to be able to take a cheap shot at someone without ever having anybody call into question their own performance and their whole behavior. That's really something that is a little bit surprising from a credible organization to carry that.
Well, let me clarify. They have been speaking to iNewsSource and not KPBS. So I just want to make that clarification. And I think we're going to end here on this, that according to the iNewsSource reporting, as we've been speaking of, 13 former NCD employees have been paid more than $300,000 in severance pay in this past year. By comparison, the much larger public agency Sandag, with nearly 300 employees, has just had 2 severance packages, or severance agreements, I should say, in that same time span. So what do you want to tell taxpayers about spending money on severance pay related to maybe the high turnover at your agency?
Well, first, from what I'm told, iNewsSource abides by the same journalistic standards as KPBS. So I want to make sure that that is clear and on the record. So if that's the standard for iNewsSource, it's also the standard for KPBS.
True.
Keep in mind, too, in terms of the 20-something odd employees that you're talking about, I mentioned to you that a significant number of those employees lost their jobs due to their grant programs being ended. And so at the end of the day, what is the compassionate, human, fair thing to do for people who are transitioning into a pretty tough economy? So if the argument is that we should not be providing services to people who are leaving employment, let's have that as a discussion point. I believe it's the right thing to do.
Okay, and I do have to leave it there because I'm out of time. North County Transit District CEO Matt Tucker, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for having me.
We have more now on the Central American migrants turned away from the Border Patrol station in Murrieta on Tuesday because of angry protests. Today, supporters of migrants rallied in San Diego. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy was there.
Do we want the children to come to San Diego? Yes! Are we going to love those children and protect those children? Welcome! Are we going to treat them as our own? These are children. Are we going to treat them as our own?
Immigration rights advocate Enrique Morones gathered Wednesday with nearly 100 other community members in downtown San Diego. They rallied to show their support for the undocumented women and children arriving from Central America.
These children are our children. Let's show the world that we know how to love our children.
Morones, who is director of the immigrant support group Border Angels, is leading an effort to collect food, clothes, toys, and other items to give to the newly arrived refugees. He says his group is planning to help in every way they can. He's urging the community to do the same.
So we're working with other agencies on providing legal assistance for free, housing, food for free, helping immigration and customs enforcement when they need to pick up some family to be picked up or dropped off at a bus station.
Tommy Ramirez is Dean of Students for the MAC Community Charter School in Chula Vista. He brought 20 students to the rally to help them get involved in the humanitarian effort.
We were very saddened to see what happened yesterday with those children. We talked about it with our students, and there were many of them that wanted to come and support.
One of those students is Ileana Patino. She and her classmates are hoping to help find housing for the women and children.
We have family that has gone through the same thing. So we thought it was good to come and help them and support them, not by pushing them away, but giving them love and try to show them our support.
Maribel Salache from San Marcos is part of the advocate group North County Immigration Task Force. She came to the rally with her 2 children to show a different message than the protesters in Murrieta.
How do you think they were thinking inside of the bus? They don't feel welcome. And that's why I was so emotional, because I can imagine.
Ronald Cole from Escondido is with a humanitarian group called the La Jolla Quakers.
I believe we can present a better image. I think we can treat people better, and I'm mortified by what happened.
Meanwhile, U.S. officials say more Central American migrants could arrive in San Diego by the weekend. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
Another shakeup at the scandal-plagued Sweetwater Union High School District. In a surprise move last night, Superintendent Ed Brand was put on administrative leave, and the school board met again this afternoon. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler joins us by phone. Hey, Matt, the school board actually named a new superintendent. Who is it?
Yes, they named Tim Glover. He's currently an assistant superintendent at the San Diego County Board of Education. He's also a former Sweetwater student. He graduated from Castle Park High School out here in Chula Vista.
Yeah, is the district giving any hint why they replaced Ed Brand? We know there's been lots of turmoil in the district with the pay for play scheme.
You know, they were very tight-lipped about it. They were saying that Ed had just was time to go. They were trying to play it off as though there was no other reason. Maybe they were hinting that maybe he wanted to go back to retirement. Although he is on administrative paid leave until his contract expires in October. So they did say last night that the idea was that he would be on administrative paid leave and be able to consult with whoever it is they appoint as the new interim superintendent, and that's Tim Glover. So hopefully they'll be able to work together and solve some of these problems.
Any sense from today's meeting what this may mean for helping the Sweetwater School District get past the corruption scandal?
Well, board members are optimistic. They all voted 5-0 to offer him the job, although Mr. Glover did apply for the job after they announced that Ed Brand was on leave. He emailed over his resume along with a bunch of other applicants, and so he wants the job to begin with. They think he cares about the community and that he cares about the Sweetwater School District and the students here, being the largest high school district in the United States with over 40,000 students.
KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler telling us about the new superintendent announcement for Sweetwater Union School District. California lawmakers are working to expand a state rule regarding contraceptive coverage. Current law requires coverage, but doesn't say companies have to pick up the copay. The new bill would change that.
You know, copays can be so steep depending upon the type of coverage you have that it really continues to be a barrier to contraceptive services. So what's critical under the new Affordable Care Act is making sure that women who have access to contraceptive services can afford them.
This week's Hobby Lobby ruling in the Supreme Court is expected to have an impact on birth control coverage for women working for closely held companies. Current state law doesn't include male contraception. An expansion of California's paid family leave went into effect this week. The bill allows workers to receive paid leave to care for seriously ill grandparents, grandchildren, siblings, in-laws. Someone on paid leave, family leave, will be able to receive 55% of their pay for up to 6 weeks. Senator Hannah Beth Jackson says that is enough to keep some families afloat.
But it is enough to be able to care for a loved one for up to 6 weeks, while at the same time not having to sacrifice your food and being able to pay for your lodging.
California has the second highest percentage of multi-generational households in the country. New research out tonight shows about 85% of women experience mood disorders during and after giving birth. For some, the mental changes can be devastating. Peggy Pico takes a closer look at postpartum depression and its treatment.
A growing body of research suggests about 1 in 8 women will develop some form of maternal mental health issue within the first year after giving birth. Researchers also found postpartum depression often begins during pregnancy, and it can develop anytime within the year following the birth. Here with more are my guests, Dr. Sean Donishmond, OBGYN at Sharp Mary Birch Hospital for Women and Newborns, and Dr. Christopher Moresh, a psychiatrist with Sharp Mesa Vista Hospital. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Dr. Donishmond, you work with women who have high-risk pregnancies. Have you seen postpartum depression start during pregnancy, and what are some of the symptoms of postpartum depression?
Well, we see some signs of depression. I mean, there are patients that may have certain risk factors. A patient who's had a history of depression, so certainly we're going to talk about those symptoms throughout the pregnancy. But if the patient has never had those risk factors, such as a family history of a depression herself, then a lot of times patients start talking about stressors in their lives. They come in, they may be crying a little bit more. I'm a little bit more tearful. You know, my partner is not as engaged. I'm having some issues with work. So it starts that way, and that's the first sign that you have to pay attention to this patient after delivery as well. So we start talking about that. Hey, this is something that we need to look look more into detail once you deliver because you may develop postpartum depression.
And Dr. Moorish, what's the difference between postpartum depression and, let's say, other types of maternal mental health issues?
Well, postpartum depression is sort of limited to the time before and during and especially after pregnancy. Maternal mental health is sort of an umbrella term. It's sort of an integrative approach to women's health in general. So it's a component of women's mental health because women suffer the same mental illnesses as men do, sometimes more often than men do, depression, anxiety, and other disorders. So what we're focusing on here, of course, is postpartum depression, and that is the disorder after a mom gives birth. And it's a very characteristic disease, and it is just that, a brain disease, as a result of depression after delivery.
How do you, Dr. Donishman, how do you screen women for postpartum depression? Do you screen them during their pregnancy, after their pregnancy?
So if they have the risk factors, very important to talk about it. If they don't have the risk factors, postnatally, we give them a screening test. So it's basically a questionnaire. They answer 10 questions themselves. And if they score high, more than 10, we want to refer those patients out to the specialist. Or see them again within the next week or two. So every woman who comes into our office, and really this should be done nationwide, gets a postnatal screen immediately after delivery and 6 weeks afterwards.
And let's say they've done this screen, Dr. Moorish, how can you tell if this is just postpartum depression that's moving on to something like postpartum psychosis, or there's some other mental illness going on that might have been triggered by pregnancy?
Well, again, oftentimes we'll start to see some worrisome signs while mom is still pregnant. And again, this is the awareness component. I think it's just like the awareness of screening moms for diabetes and thyroid disease from years ago. Now we're looking at mental health components. Baby blues are something different. Every mom after giving birth has baby blues. That's just coming off of all that estrogen and hormones. But postpartum depression often starts 2 or 4 weeks after delivery, perhaps as long as 12 months after delivery. And it's a very characteristic disorder. It's difficulty attaching to the baby, having fear of the baby or fear that she might harm the baby. It's intrusive thoughts. And often it's times where moms aren't going to say anything because they're afraid to.
That's what I wanted to ask about. Women, it does seem, might be reluctant. How come they're reluctant? What are they afraid of?
Well, I think that in people in general, there's a stigma still with mental illness. They fear that they're going to be called bad moms or that they're not good enough to be a mom. And they already get advice from family members about how to be the best mom possible. So it's pretty intimidating. So when we talk to patients, we try and take the blame out of the conversation and say it's not a mom problem, it's a brain problem.
It's supposed to be a happy moment.
That's right.
So when they feel that way, they feel a little bit odd. And women are very proud.
And it's a hormone issue, again, right? The hormones spike and drop, as you mentioned.
So genetic predisposition, hormonal, I mean, hormones increase by 100-fold, and then all of a sudden after delivery, they decrease. So if you have a genetic predisposition to it, if there are other stresses in your life, then certainly you can end up with a disease.
You know, what type of treatment options are there for women with postpartum depression?
It's usually medication, psychotherapy, support groups, so it's a combination of things. We're not 100% sure if, it may take a certain time for a medication to be adjusted or several medications to be adjusted to take effect, but support groups certainly help.
Absolutely.
Having a supportive family partner really helps.
In a nutshell, what should new moms, family, friends do if they suspect that a woman really is suffering with postpartum depression?
Realize that this is part of life. All of us are working very hard to survive in this world. This is something that you need to speak up about. This is not, it has nothing to do with you. It's a mental issue. It's something that needs to be addressed with caretakers, with partners, with family members, so we can address it, because this has long-term complications. It has implications with you bonding with your child. It has issues with bonding with your partner and marital discord. So it's got a lot of negative implications if it's not addressed quickly.
Well, we're out of time, so we have to end it there. Dr. Donishman and Dr. Moorish, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, we look back at the Civil Rights Act 50 years to the day after it was signed into law. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Over the Line returns to Fiesta Island this month. It'll be the 61st year for the beach softball event, known more for its drinking and racy team names than athletic skill. It was threatened by lawsuits, and organizers talked about restricting alcohol sales this year, but San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer says it's not necessary.
After receiving community feedback and working with the city, AMBAC revised the application to reflect its traditional operations. and the city has issued a permit earlier this week. The San Diego Police Department will be working closely with event organizers to ensure another safe and secure tournament. And the city attorney and city staff will be looking at long-term solutions to ensure more certainty not only for Over the Line, but other events in the future right here at Fiesta Island.
The Old Mission Beach Athletic Club runs the event every year and supports a number of local charities with the proceeds. A replica of the San Salvador being constructed at Spanish Landing downtown reached another milestone. The final plank was put in place today on the vessel's hull. That means the ship can now be treated, sealed, and painted. The San Salvador was the flagship of explorer Juan Cabrillo, who sailed into San Diego Bay in 1542. Once completed, the $6.2 million reproduction will become a floating museum sailing to ports throughout the state. Warm sailing weather for the weekend as we head towards the 4th of July and the second half of this week. It'll be mostly in the 70s with a mix of sun and clouds later in the day. Also a mix of sun and clouds for the inland valleys, a bit warmer there, temperatures in the 80s. Sunshine and temperatures in the 80s as well for the mountain areas, with a chance of thunderstorms there and in the desert this weekend. Otherwise, desert temperatures well above 100 and plenty of sun. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.